Hey guys, TrepChains here. I wanted to make a guide on the Rift Guardian killer for the Necromancer Pestilence build. I was playing this build a lot in Season 13, patch 2.6.1. Nothing's changing at the moment, so this is valid going forward whenever patch 2.6.1 exists. First up, I just want to talk about some gameplay. So you need to stay alive for most of the Rift, particularly when you're pushing high level, and this is really a build which is made for pushing high level. So to stay alive, there's a few things you need to do. First up, you need to get and then keep your Pestilence 4-piece bonus stacks, which means for every corpse lance hit, you get reduced damage by 2% up to a maximum of 50%, and this lasts for 15 seconds. So you want to be setting off Land of the Dead and using your Corpse Lance and Devour on the first pull of a Grift to build up that Pestilence bonus. And then you maintain it and you build it up even beforehand partially using Blood Rush, Molting, and then Devour. And you need to make sure this happens within that 15 seconds each time. Blood Rush, when you Blood Rush, it leaves a corpse for you via Molting, and then Devour uses that corpse to throw a Corpse Lance at a nearby enemy. You need to do this when you're near an enemy. If there's no enemies on screen, it's not going to work because the Corpse Lance won't actually hit them. So that's how you keep that up. You also are wearing Dainty's Binding. So you need to make sure there's cursed enemies around you to make sure you're getting the 50% maximum off of that. Which also means whenever you enter a new level in a Grift, you want to make sure you go and curse something pretty early. Also, if you're running a long way away from your group, trying to get some enemies, occasionally you want to just make sure you curse something nearby to make sure that's having an effect. The other thing I recommend for surviving is having all of your Paragon in Vitality throughout the main part of the Rift, and only switching it into Intelligence at about 95% or higher so you're preparing for your actual Rift Guardian kill, because that Vitality is really going to help you survive. You should try and run the entire Rift in Intelligence. You're probably going to die a fair bit more, and you do want to be alive, because not only are you just trying to survive, you're actually providing some other help to your group. Firstly, you can be out there helping attract mobs back to the group. So you can kind of be a secondary scout. Obviously your barb's doing most of the scouting, but you can be going back, pulling elites, helping walk elites forward, or going forward and seeing what's ahead and pulling stuff back to the group. Obviously making sure you're Blood Rush and Devouring as you do that so you don't lose your bonuses. You're cursing the enemies that are in the group, so when you are back with the wizard and you're in a pool group, you want to be making sure everything is cursed, because that, reduces their damage, as well as, provides that frailty 15% kill on them. So you just hit stuff with your cursed scythe to curse it. And then you also want to provide freezing with the Land of the Dead. And your Corpse Lancers are gonna, when you're freezing them, are gonna provide extra critical hit chance for your wizard. So with each of those Lancers in Land of the Dead, you get 5% crit on each monster building up. It only lasts for about 5 seconds, so if it's possible to time it just before your wizard's arcane, if your wizard's telling you when that is, do that. But otherwise, just, kind of do it whenever to try and help your group. Okay, I think that's most of the in-Rift type gameplay I can think of right now. So let's move on to the actual Rift Guardian kill, which is, at the end of the day, why you exist. Okay, so with the Rift Guardian, the first thing you want to do is make sure your Paragon is in correctly. So you want Intelligence for the Rift Guardian kill. I personally still leave my stats in movement speed as well. I know some people don't, because, sometimes you have to move the Rift Guardian, or you have to, run around and get back, and I don't really want to lose time on that. So I personally put all in resource, all in movement speed, and then the rest in intelligence. Okay, so once you're set up properly like that. You do also, if at all possible, want to try and keep your Pestilence bonus while you're switching and in your Rift Guarding kill. Now that may not be possible because once all your mobs are dying, there's nothing really for those Corpse Lancers to hit, but yeah, keep doing your Blood Rush and Devour during the Rift Guarding kill to try and give yourself some survivability. In terms of how you actually go about firing off your Corpse Lancers, you always want to hit Sim before you hit Land of the Dead, because it lasts a bit longer, so that makes you sure you've got your Sim for the whole thing. If you hit Land of the Dead first, you're missing out on a bit of Sim. And then what you want to do is you want to hold one of your Corpse Lance or your Devour and spam the other one. I personally now hold Corpse Lance and spam Devour, but in the testing I did, it didn't really matter. Some people say it does, but yeah, all the tests I ran, I got about equal boss kill times. So yeah, I personally am holding Corpse Lance and spamming Devour, but I think it's kind of up to you which of these you do. And when you start that, when you're actually going for the kill and you're trying to kill something, you need to start your Land of the Dead cycle about halfway through physical, mid-physical, and that means you get 2 seconds of physical, 4 seconds of poison, which you don't care about, but importantly 4 seconds of cold to finish off, because this is a cold based build. So you want to finish on cold because then the boss has the maximum crit on it and the maximum stacks before you start the cycling. The rest of the time between your cycles, you just want to be hitting it with Cursed Scythe, building up your stricken stacks as much as possible, and yeah, keeping up your Pestilence 4-piece where possible using Blood Rush and Devour. So just, yeah, building up the stricken the rest of the time. The other important thing is that any crowd control the boss has on it could affect your Land of the Dead, and you don't want your crowd control to come off from your frozen before that 10 seconds is up, particularly as you're having your cold at the end. So typically 5 to 10 seconds before you go. I generally just say next physical, which is like a full 10 seconds before I go. Let your supports know, just to make sure they're really not putting any crowd control onto that boss, particularly the monk. The barb shouldn't be most of the time anyway, but the monk generally can be with its ice hit, freezing hit, but it doesn't do a lot, so if it stops within 10 seconds, it should all be good. So for pylons, power is your best friend, if possible, if it's possible to save it through the rift for your kill. Otherwise, channeling is your next best pylon to help you take down the RG. Obviously, you want to make sure they get timed correctly. So just to reiterate, in the critical moments, what you're doing, you're halfway through your physical cycle, or just before, you move away from the boss with Blood Rush, and then you hit Simulacrum, followed by Land of the Dead. Land of the Dead is what should be hit about that halfway through physical. Make sure you're targeting the boss, holding Corpse Lance, spamming Devour, or holding Devour, spamming Corpse Lance, whichever way you prefer to do it. Making sure that that last cold cycle is at the end of that Land of the Dead to get maximum damage and hopefully help you take down that boss. Okay, I'm going to move on to a quick gear check now in game. This is my Necromancer pretty much from Season 13. I do have some more Paragon showing up now in non-season, but I haven't applied that Paragon so that the damage, etc. is still about what I was running at the end of Season 13, so I had about 2500 Paragon in Season 13. Okay, so overall I had about 2.4 million DPS, and the highest grift my group cleared was a GR 134. The other thing I want to mention straight up is attack speed. It's really important for this build that you try and hit the 2.0 attacks per second breakpoint, which means you need 7 attack speed on every item that can have it except for one. You're allowed 1/6% attack speed, but you really need to hit that 2.0 breakpoint. The other thing that's useful to you is cooldown reduction to reduce your gap between Land of the Dead cycles, but because you're aiming for attack speed pretty heavily, You probably can't get that as high, so I was running 37% here. One of the things importantly that you don't need here that you would on most DPS builds is critical hit chance. So you actually don't want to roll critical hit chance, because in combination with your Land of the Dead and your Corpse Lance Brittle Touch, your enemies that you're actually hitting with that, and in particular the Rift Guardian, are going to be increasing their critical hit chance every time they're hit by a Corpse Lance. So you basically max out your critical hit chance just by hitting them with Corpse Lances. So you don't actually need to build that into your stats. Okay, so for gear, you're wearing 6 pieces of Pestilence set, which is all pieces there. So Pestilence helm, you really want survivability on this. There's no skill you can roll on this, and again, you don't want the critical hit chance because you get that elsewhere. So intelligence, vitality, % life is great. Shoulders, you can get Corpse Lance damage on this, so you definitely want your Corpse Lance damage. Number 1, you also want cooldown as your second, but then intelligence, vitality as well. Your gloves, you don't want critical hit chance with these, and they automatically roll something like resource cost reduction, I believe. So you've got to be able to roll that off. So they're actually quite difficult to get good gloves. But these are the stats you want: intelligence, attack speed, critical hit damage, and cooldown on your gloves. Pants, survivability, intelligence, vitality, armor is what you want. For your boots, again, it's about just survivability. So I've got intelligence, vitality, armor, and regen life because there's not much else to have on there. And I've actually rolled my secondary to physical resistance as the way I thought was best to get extra survivability on those. So they're your Pestilence pieces. Importantly, that 4-piece bonus, as I said, you need to be keeping that up in the Rift. And you can see your 6 set bonus is a buff to your Corpse Lance damage. So that's the other big reason you're doing it. And then the 2-piece set is important because when you're hitting Devour and consuming that corpse, that's how you actually get your Corpse Lances to fire to keep up, which helps you keep up your 4-piece bonus. So it kind of all works together there for this build. So the other set you're wearing is the Endless Walk set, Traveler's Pledge, Compass Rose. So this, you can see, this is my place where I have only 6% attack speed. So every other attack speed piece I have 7%. So it is a build based around cold. Your Corpse Lances are Brittle Touch, which is cold. So on this you need cold skill damage, attack speed, and critical hit damage. So you don't need critical hit chance anywhere, because you're going to be maxing that with your lances, but you do need critical hit damage wherever you can get it to maximize your damage. So yeah, cold skill, attack speed, critical hit damage is good. Your ring, you can see I wasn't even wearing an ancient ring because you definitely need one with 7% attack speed, and you need one preferably with critical hit damage. There's other stuff you could have on there, like more cooldown and stuff would be helpful. But this was the best I found for season 13. So I've got attack speed, critical hit damage, intelligence, and unfortunately % life. But yeah, a plus damage roll or something would be great on there as well, or cooldown. Your other ring can either be Crispin Sentence, so that there is rolled quite well, intelligence, attack speed, critical hit damage. Instead of the intelligence, again, you could have something else like a plus damage roll, or I don't know, maybe some cooldown or something as well, but you know, that's the best I got, and it is pretty good. It's primal. Or you could wear a convention if you have a better rolled convention of elements that fits. Otherwise, out of them, you wear your best and put the other one in the cube. And then your braces, you need to be wearing Lucini Prowlers because they have that they can get up to 7% attack speed, which you're going to need to hit that 2.0 breakpoint. So on these, you want cold skill damage, intelligence, vitality, attack speed, and then some other stat. The other stat's not too important. Again, remember, you don't need the critical hit chance, so survivability stat's actually better. So life per hit, as I've got here, is quite good. And your Dainties binding. So you're wearing that orange stat there. That's the damage reduction when you're hitting enemies with your curses. So again, When you get into a new level, make sure you hit something early to make sure you're getting that damage reduction to help you not die. But yeah, on the belt as well, it's all about survival stats. So you want your orange stat high, but then intelligence, vitality, percent life is good. Probably you'd want an armor roll instead of the resist all roll that I have on this particular one. Okay, so offhand can be any offhand. The orange stat does not actually matter for this build. There's none of the orange stats on the phylacteries actually help this build, so it doesn't matter which the offhand is. But you do need your secondary to have the maximum essence on it. So there is something in your skills. I don't remember exactly where, but more essence is better. Basically, it will give you more damage. So yeah, so do make sure you've got max essence as secondary everywhere you can. So overall, the rolls on this I have are okay, except I do have a critical chance roll, which I'd rather not have. But yeah, secondary max essence, then a damage roll, intelligence, cooldown, and corpse lance damage are really good. And then instead of the critical chance, you'd, you know, want something else like elite damage, for example, would be great for killing a Rift Guardian. And then the weapon. So weapon, again, you want that secondary max essence. It will boost your damage. And then the orange stat on this is really important. You do want that as high as possible. You can see here I've got a 196%. The range is 150 to 200. So, you know, I've had one that rolled really well in the top stats, but it was like 151 or something, and it's not really usable. So you do want something in the top range for the orange stat there, because that's a massive damage boost to you for anything that's cursed, and you should be cursing everything. Okay, so the other stats you want on this are a high damage roll up the top, which is where my one here isn't so great. But then 10% damage is great, intelligence is great, and attack speed is great. You know, some people, instead of that intelligence, if they got an absolutely perfect one, might want some elite damage there as well. Okay, so that's, I think, the main gear pieces. Now, you'll note every piece is augmented. I was only able to augment last season with about 105, so you'll see most of these have 105s on them. But the augments here are all intelligence, all about just boosting my damage. So that's what you want to augment every piece with. The gems in my chest armor and pants are also just intelligence, again, just to boost damage. That's what I want. I want damage. And finally, a gem in the helm is a cooldown gem. So that's just to reduce your Land of the Dead cooldowns. So that's the gems, the augments, legendary gems. So your job primarily is Rift Guardian killer. So you need to be using Bane of the Stricken, as any good Rift Guardian killer should, no matter what the build is. So all that does is build up damage with time. Effectively, every hit is going to give you more damage on that Guardian. It does make it difficult if there's ads. You much prefer a single target, because when there's ads, you get no choice whether Stricken stacks or could stack on the ads instead of on the boss. So ideally, single targets are your friend. And with each hit, you're going to be doing more and more damage to the boss. So that's great. Bane of the Trapped. Most of your damage is happening when everything's frozen in Land of the Dead. And it works perfectly with Crispins, which does more damage when stuff is frozen as well. So that's just a massive damage boost while everything's frozen or afflicted. Importantly, when you have something like a channeling pylon, and there's a chance that your own Land of the Dead is going to affect your next cycle, if you want to cycle straight after, you need your monk to be chilling it. So your monk can do like one hit with its main attack and then one hit Cyclone Strike, just to keep the boss chilled, which will help set off your Bane of the Trapped as well, and your Crispin Streak. And finally, Zay's Stone of Vengeance. This is about, you get more damage for the distance between you and the target. Hopefully the Rift Guardian is what we're really focused on here as our main thing. So you want to be 50 yards away if at all possible, which, you know, is kind of like, whoops, towards the corner of the screen, out here. You kind of try and go diagonal if the map allows it, to get that max distance on the boss. Okay, so I think that's most of the gear, augments, legendary gems. let's have a quick look at the cube. Now the cube is going to be hidden a little bit by my banner, so we'll actually look at it in here as well. So the weapon is Raylena's Shadow Hook. This is where your maximum essence is important. So you've got Raylena's Shadow Hook in the cube, and every point of maximum essence increases your damage by 0.5%. So basically that's where you get your extra damage on, so you want that maximum essence. You're wearing in your cube, Corpse Whisperer pauldrons for your shoulders, and this is a 30% damage increase on corpse lance when you're consuming a corpse, and pretty much you're consuming corpses all the time. You're firing corpse lances in this build, so that's a straight damage buff. And then, as I say, I've got Convention of Elements in my cube, but you could also wear that and have Christmas cube. Both of them are a damage boost. Christmas when stuff is under control, impairing effects, and Convention of Elements is when it matches your cycle, which, as I say, for this build, you're focusing on cold, is where you want to do your maximum damage. Okay, so that's your gear, gearing this build. Now I'm going to quickly go through the skills. So Grim Scythe, Curse Scythe is your main attack. This is what you're generally just hitting things with through the rift. You're cursing it, helps out your entire party, but also importantly on the boss. So you don't run a curse, you're cursing stuff using Grim Scythe instead. Corpse Lance, this ends up being the majority of your damage, so this is what I personally hold this down during my Land of the Dead, but you could spam it, up to you. But this is what's helping you increase that critical hit chance with Corpse Lance Brittle Touch. Devour Satiated is dragging up the corpses, and Satiated particularly is giving you maximum life, so it actually makes you not stronger, but more survivable during the Land of the Dead cycle, which is pretty important because you don't want to die in your main damage section, which occurs every minute and a bit. Sim Reservoir, so this doubles everything. This is basically double it, so it duplicates your secondary skills. So your Corpse Lance is a secondary skill, so it gives you basically double lances. But it also importantly increases, by using Reservoir, your maximum essence while Sim is active. So that's going to double your essence pool, which then works with your cubed Raylena's Shadow Hook to increase your damage even more. So massive damage boost there. Blood Rush Molting. Blood Rush is your movement skill. Molting, as I say, is important because that makes it drop a corpse, which then you use to keep up your Pestilence 4-piece bonus. Land of the Dead Frozen Lands, this is where the action's at. So cooldown's 120 as base, but you use some cooldown reduction to get that down a little. But this allows you to use your corpse skills, including Corpse Lance, at will for 10 seconds. So you're doing this 10 seconds of damage every, minute and a half or so. Hopefully a little less than that. So this is where all the action happens, and it freezes stuff, which then sets off all your CC type skills and gems as well. Okay, so for passives, I'm running Eternal Torment. The important part of Eternal Torment is not that our curses cost less because we're not running a curse, but it's important because the curses last forever. So if I curse something, I don't have to worry about the curse dropping off. Final Service, Cheat Death, I don't want to die, so I'm running Final Service. Standalone, also survivability, so I'm not running any minions on this build, so this helps me survive by increasing my armor, doubling my armor. And Overwhelming Essence increases my maximum essence, which then again will work, with Sim when Sim doubles it, and with my Raylena's Shadow Hook in the cube to give me more damage. So yeah, really there's a couple of survivability things in here, but most of it's about multiplying that damage to get that maximum damage on the Rift Guardian. So I think I've covered everything, hopefully. Skills, gear, augments, ledge gems, cube, breakpoints even, which I don't normally cover, but it is absolutely critical to hit that 2.0 breakpoint in this build, which is here. 2 attacks per second, critical for this build, so try and hit it. Yeah, and yeah, again, I guess the other thing is your Paragon. During the Rift, I personally run it in Vitality to survive, and then 95% plus, try and get somewhere safe and change it over from Vitality into Intelligence to maximize your damage for that Rift Guardian, which is the key reason you are in the party. So yeah, this is your Paragon page. I always keep my max essence in, which as you can see works for damage. I personally always keep the movement speed in to help me move around, including on the Guardian myself. But yeah, these two during the Rift, I do recommend Vitality for most of the Rift, and then switching over to Intelligence at that 95+% mark to make sure you're killing the Rift Guardian with your maximum damage. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been helpful. See you in Sanctuary. GG.